everyone, Alpha Eagle here again. Welcome back to my channel. I pray you're all doing well, and may God bless you all. I'm continuing my coverage of the woke garbage known as X-Men 97. In episode 9, not much really happens. The X-Men split into two teams. Gold team consisting of Storm, Jean, Forge, Beast, Cable, and Morph. They go after Bastion, Mr. Sinister, and the Sentinels. And Blue team consisting of Cyclops, Professor X, Nightcrawler, Jubilee, and Wolverine. And they go after Magneto and the two traitors, Rogue and Sunspot. And a big fight ensues, and that's about it. I'll be fair and say this is probably the best episode yet, but that's kind of like saying it's the nicest piece of trash on a pile of garbage. It's the most comic book of all the episodes so far. It's basically just good guys fighting bad guys. Basic comic book stuff. But that's also what's bad about it. It's too basic. Not much really happens, and that makes it boring. Again, I'll be fair and say it's probably the least woke episode. But again, that's not saying much since all the episodes have been very woke. And I'll get to that later. First, the best part of the episode, and that's that Wolverine stabs the evil terrorist bigot Magneto, and Magneto dies. Again, maybe. I'm sure he'll come back. Now some of you out there might be calling me a hypocrite, saying how can you like the fact that Wolverine just tried to kill Magneto, but you called Rogue a murderer for trying to kill Trask? And I'll say, this is two very different situations. First, Rogue attacked innocent soldiers at the military prison. Magneto is far from innocent. Now some may say, well, Trask wasn't innocent. Well, yes and no. Trask did make the Sentinels, but he was under the control of Mr. Sinister and Bastion at the time, much like Morph. And Morph isn't guilty for the things he did under the control of Mr. Sinister, and neither was Madeline. So if the X-Men can forgive Morph and Madeline, they should be able to forgive Trask, right? Now that's what I don't understand. All three of them, Trask, Madeline, and Morph, were under the control of Mr. Sinister, and all of them did bad things. But people are so quick to forgive Morph and Madeline, but they won't forgive Trask. Now, personally, I think it's because Trask is a straight white male, and he's human, while Madeline is a woman and a mutant, and Morph is a mutant, and he's gay in this version. Therefore, people see them as oppressed, while Trask is the oppressor. In this episode, we saw that Cable was also under the control of Mr. Sinister. Now, will the audience forgive him for supposedly killing Jean? Well, he's a straight white male, but he's also a mutant, so they'll probably forgive him, unlike the evil human oppressor Trask. Now, the second difference between Rogue trying to kill Trask and Wolverine trying to kill Magneto is that Rogue was on a quest for revenge. She wanted revenge for the death of Gambit. Wolverine isn't out for revenge. It's nothing personal for Wolverine. He's basically doing his job. This isn't something he wants to do. This is something he has to do. Now, the third reason is that Trask had basically given up. He was going to self-delete. So there was no reason for Rogue to try and kill him. He was done. Magneto, on the other hand, was not going to give up. The X-Men tried to reason with him. They gave him every opportunity to stop what he was doing, but he was going to do what he was going to do. So Wolverine also had to do what he had to do. The fourth reason is that Trask already admitted to his mistakes. He knew what he did was wrong, and he wanted to atone for what he did. Magneto, on the other hand, thinks he's right. He thinks he's justified in his mass murder. He has no plans to atone for his evil. So again, he has to be stopped. And Wolverine is the one who can do it. And for the fifth and final reason, this is self-defense. If Wolverine doesn't stop Magneto, potentially millions or even billions of people could die, including Wolverine himself. Rogue's life, on the other hand, was not in danger at that specific time when she tried to kill Trask. Rogue did not try to kill Trask in self-defense. She did it for revenge, which is evil. So again, Wolverine attempting to kill Magneto is nothing like Rogue trying to murder Trask. Wolverine did murder several innocent humans infected with the Prime Sentinel virus in the previous episode, so that's not good. Now, see my previous episode for my take on that, but let's try to focus on this episode for now. Is that they showed a character that I actually liked. A female reporter who was infected with Bastion's Prime Sentinel virus is still alive, and it looks like the virus is curable. However, if the virus is curable, that means that what I said in my previous video is true. The X-Men slaughtered many innocent people. Now that sucks, and it's a very big negative about this show. Anyway, those are the only two good parts of this episode, so now on to the bad. Now I'll start with some of the lesser complaints and then move on to the worst. First, again, like the last episode, there is a lot more key jangling. The X-Men suit up in their classic costumes. Now, I have to admit, I enjoyed this. However, it serves no purpose whatsoever to the story. It's just there as nostalgia bait, so people can say, I know what that is, like some trained seal. And the same goes for Morph changing into Hulk.
Oh, what that is!
Next, no X-Men 97 episode would be complete without making the traitor Sunspot look like a weak, pathetic little female dog.
I said sorry.
Jubes, I said I'm sorry. Can he sound any more weak and pathetic? He's running away from Jubilee of all people. Who would be afraid of Jubilee? Sunspot is way more powerful than Jubilee. There is no way he would lose to her in a fight. Now, I'm not super familiar with Sunspot in the comics. Now, can someone tell me, does he act this much like a female dog in the comics? Now, if you're a fan of Sunspot, you can't be happy with the way they portrayed him. Even fans of this series have to admit they did him dirty. And the only reasons why I think that they did him so dirty in this one is, one, he's a man, and two, he's rich. Now, those are two things that people on the left really hate. I don't know which character the writers ruined more, Sunspot or Morph. Now, speaking of Morph, listen to what the traitor Rogue had to say about him.
And hell, Morph was barely on the team 30 minutes before we tossed them to the wolves.
And there it is.
Fucking pronouns! Fucking
Morph them instead of the correct pronoun of him. Now, how can anyone who heard that still claim that the show is not woke? Even if you're someone who doesn't care whether the show's woke or not, using they-them non-binary pronouns is inaccurate, as the 92 series always referred to Morph as he-him.
Morph! He's gone, mon ami. Morph. He's gone.
Also, as the title suggests, the show takes place in 1997. Non-binary wasn't a thing back then. Well, non-binary was never a thing, since it's an imaginary gender, but I won't get into that now. So it doesn't even make sense for a Rogue to use Morph's preferred, quote, non-binary pronouns. The creators of the show who claimed this was a continuation of the 92 series was just proven to be liars. When the X-Men confront Magneto, he says this.
Are not gods, Magnus.
Gods abandon those who believe in them. Mutants do not.
Now, as a Christian, I found this very offensive, as should any person of faith, regardless of which religion you belong to. This is just another anti-Christian jab from the writers. Now, some may say, well, the one who said this was Magneto, and he's a villain. Well, yeah, the villain that the writers tried to make look sympathetic. And also notice that they showed the Christian character Nightcrawler after he said that, and Nightcrawler said nothing. Series, they showed Nightcrawler saying things that a Christian would never say, like Gamut's sins made him a hero. So this, combined with what Magneto said, makes me think that this show is very anti-Christian. Well, as I said, the X-Men fighting the evil terrorist bigot Magneto is my favorite part of this episode, but my question is, why are the X-Men so dumb? Why did it take the X-Men so long for them to figure out the obvious? Why did it take 9 episodes for them to figure out that Magneto is the bad guy? Being so woke, that's my biggest complaint about this series. The X-Men act so dumb. For example, All this could have been avoided if the Professor X simply contacted the X-Men when he was on the Shi'ar homeworld. And he could have told them, hey, I'm still alive, I'm here in the Shi'ar homeworld, I've hooked up with Elandra, and by the way, don't let Magneto take over the school. If he did that, Magneto would probably still be in hiding, and wouldn't have taken over the school, Storm wouldn't have lost her powers and left the team, the X-Men wouldn't have gone to the Genosha Gala, and Gambit would still be alive, and Rogue wouldn't have lost her mind and gone all full supervillain. All this because Chuck couldn't be bothered to send a message which Lilandra even suggested that he do.
You should message them. Use a hologlobe.
Even Cyclops points out how dumb the professor is when he says this.
Magneto, sir? Really? What did you expect was going to happen when you tossed him to school?
Hold on, Cyclops. When Magneto took over the school, you didn't put up much of a fight. In fact, you made him coffee and welcomed him into the school. Now listen to Chuck's reason for leaving the school to Magneto.
I wanted you two to be free, to finally be together, to have a family, a child like Nathan.
Can someone please tell me, how does that make any sense? How does giving the school to Magneto allow Scott and Jean to have a family of their own? I mean, being an X-Men is essentially Scott and Jean's jobs, and there are millions of people out there who have families and jobs, so there is no reason why they can't have a family and still be X-Men. Also, what does it have to do with leaving the school to Magneto? Chuck seems to be changing the subject. Later, Beast and Forge are working on a technology that would permanently stop Bastion's control over the Sentinels. But Storm objects to this, but why? Simply because she's still pissed that she had her powers taken away? That's so dumb. She's letting her personal feelings get in the way of the X-Men stopping Bastion for good. Also, this is another case when the women are belittling the men. Rogue said a lot of dumb things in this episode. For example, when joining Magneto, which is dumb to begin with, she said this.
In Genosha, I made a choice to lead our kind to a new age. I stand by that choice.
Rogue, do not turn your back on family.
You were gone, gal. None of you were there the day Genosha fell.
Nightcrawler was. He's right there.
Who dies next, Professor? Jean? Been there, done that.
So there's a little bit of foreshadowing there since she, quote, dies in this episode. I'm sure she'll be back. Anyway, it's kind of dumb for the writers to point out how many characters they killed because it shows how bad they are at writing, since that's the only way they can get the audience invested into the story is to kill off a character. It's just a lazy tactic to manipulate the audience into giving a crap. Rogue then says this.
Who knows where Bishop is?
That's actually a good question. What has Bishop been doing this whole time in the future? But I think the writers just showed their hand. That's probably how this mess will all get straightened out. Bishop will show up and do something to fix the future. During the fight with Magneto, Rogue tackles Wolverine and says this.
Time out, sugar. You're playing to kill.
Female dog, you're such a hypocrite. You're the one who tried to kill Trask. You potentially killed many soldiers at the military prison. So who are you to lecture Wolverine on trying to kill Magneto? Later on in the fight, Professor X takes control of Magneto's mind, and he attempts to use Magneto's own power to fix what Magneto did to the Earth's magnetic field. Then Cyclops does this.
I'm sorry, sir. Gold Team still needs more time.
Then what was the point of that? They almost had him. I must have missed something, but I don't know why Gold Team has to finish their mission first. This was another dumb thing. Then Magneto says this dumb thing.
You are a traitor to your race.
Mutants aren't a race. They're just a genetic mutation. So Magneto was dumb for saying that. And Magneto and Chuck are the same race. Well, this version of Magneto is Jewish, and people argue whether or not Jewish people are white, but let's not get into that. Regardless, that was dumb for Magneto to say. Are the writers dumb for equating mutancy to race? See, this is the problem when you try to narrow the X-Men down to an analogy for either race, religion, sexuality, or any other specific group. It restricts the analogy and excludes people when the X-Men were meant to include a larger group. That's why they are simply meant to be outcasts and not an analogy for any specific group. Anyway, coming back to where I started, Wolverine stabs Magneto, and Magneto pulls all the adamantium out of Wolverine's body, and the episode ends there. Now, many people were shocked by this, but I saw this coming since I read the comics that this story was based on, so I know that Wolverine will survive. And most likely they will all survive, and some might even come back to life. I've already predicted that Bishop will set things right. So that was episode 9. Again, to be fair, that was probably the best episode so far. It did have a lot of action, however, the X-Men say and do a lot of dumb things. Anyway, that's about it for this video. I'm Alpha Eagle. God bless you for watching, God bless America, and I pray that other people take off their nostalgia goggles so they can see how dumb this show really is.